Hey, Drew here, and we have a special guest with us tonight. This is my wife, Jordan. I typically steal ideas from her and sometimes don't attribute them. So tonight she gets her moment in the spotlight. No, so the reason she's here is because she was worried talking to me about this episode that I wasn't going to be effusive enough in my praise.
I'm here to defend all the people who love the show.
Oh, no, you're making it sound like I hate it.
Well, you just don't show enough love for it.
But that might be true. So given that that's why you're here, can you just briefly describe your passion for Severance and this episode in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I love watching shows with Drew, obviously, and my favorite type of show is thriller, so Severance obviously fits that bill. I've been obsessively reading Reddit posts about this show, which is not something I normally do, just because there's so much to dive into with all the world building. And I loved this episode because I felt like it paid off, a lot of stuff paid off from throughout the whole season. It showed, like, a lot of the characters got time to actually finish to a small degree their storylines from things that they problems or things they've been going through in the season. I didn't expect most questions to be answered going into it, so it was fine with me that a lot wasn't answered. I want more of the show, so that made me happy.
You kept thinking
it was a great episode.
You kept thinking that you weren't gonna get, like, Helly wasn't gonna get her speech out, and you thought, you kept thinking that they wouldn't get to the thing that they were trying to get to. So when they gave us just a little bit more than we expected, I think we felt grateful just for that. And
yeah, for sure.
Good second season setup though, because they didn't really change the status quo that much. I mean, I think
we'll see, right? I don't know what they're going to do to the innies after.
Well, I mean, they could theoretically all just be back in the office doing the same thing again and just, being ground into the dirt like Kendall in season 2 of Succession.
That's true. And I think one of the things I thought was interesting from my Reddit digging was someone had screenshotted from last week's episode 8 the list of functions next to the, what's it called?
The temperaments?
No, what's the procedure they did to open them up in the outside world?
Oh, I forget the name of it.
The thing Dylan was doing for them, there's all these other names that were really interesting, and some of them definitely
the protocols.
Yeah, the protocols.
That they had.
So I think it would be interesting if they end up using some of those other protocols potentially on them, because some of them definitely would have implied, maybe resetting them.
Yeah.
Super interesting to kind of, go back and look at if you do a rewatch.
Interesting.
You still need to do a rewatch.
I know. So you mentioned prowling around Reddit looking for theories. Were there any major theories that got confirmed this episode?
Yeah, definitely. Helly was the biggest one. I constantly saw lots of people thought she was an Egan, so I think it was smart of them to make that pretty early on. I think that was maybe the biggest thing that they revealed this episode. I feel already knew a lot about a lot of the other.
If you were suspicious of that at all, I feel like that got confirmed last week with just the brief moment when they showed her at the
gala.
Yeah.
So. I think one of the things I loved about the season that Drew pointed out early on was all of the the way they used the colors. So it was fun how the whole gala was blue, which obviously was some symbolizing Lumen and the company culture that whole season. So I just loved how they really went all the way with that in the finale.
Yeah, and then the roses pop up behind her in the bathroom.
It's squealing. And the red roses were so bright. I loved the cinematography and everything they did.
Were there any other theories that got confirmed?
I feel like
evidence for theories that came up?
I will have to rewatch. I will have to rewatch that a couple of times. I was yelling at Drew during especially the Irving scenes because there was just so much there.
Yeah,
I felt like they were probably revealing so much about the world, but it was going too fast. So
yeah, you're going to be studying.
There's probably more there. I still have to.
A bunch of people are going to be studying screen grabs on Reddit later. I don't really want to do that because I prefer to have things revealed that in a way that if I can guess it just watching the show, it's kind of cool. But I hate that someone pauses the show and then figures out something that they were maybe only hoping you would notice on a rewatch.
Yeah.
I prefer to find out, for instance, the radar the radar was the dog. I prefer to find out that the way that it got revealed this episode. So.
Well, with the radar thing, I figured that out from the Reddit this past week, and I don't know that I would have personally remembered Irving's wellness session where he says that he loves the sound of radar.
Yeah.
Because it is cooler when you remember that, oh, his dog's name is Radar. Like, oh, they have all this, or like he has hot sauce in his kitchen, and he talks about like not liking hot sauce in the office. So, like, or he's always tired and he's drinking all this coffee. There's just things that it was helpful to like do the rewatch, and then some of the stuff I think was helpful to like find in Reddit from people who are like really into it, like me.
So I thought this episode was breathtaking because it was just like so tense and just hard to stand the tension. But I also found myself like frustrated because it's going to be a while before we get a second season, and it's just like this is a hard way to end. It almost like was almost as inconclusive as last week's ending. So how satisfied were you?
Well, I think, like I said at the beginning, because I expected there to be a lot of questions left,
expectations are important.
I was really mainly looking for them to close up some things from the season, or just at least let characters do things. Like we were all like, let Helly speak at the end. Like I think we all wanted to see Helly have her moment to like kind of rebel, and it was fun to see that happen. Like take an actual stand. It was fun to see Mark. I mean, I loved how they ended it, like, on the line, she's alive, and it, like, all the tension had been built up, and then it's just,
but they have no idea what he meant.
It was, no, he was holding the frame. I'm pretty sure that they will.
They will? Okay.
Devin's smart enough. She just heard all this stuff from him. I feel like they've established she's pretty intelligent.
Okay, but.
He's holding the frame. She's saying she's alive, and they've just been talking about her. Like, I personally am of the mind that Devin can put that together.
I don't think they can put that together, because if I don't know why they think she's dead.
Well, I guess it depends on how much Helly's speech gets publicized. Because like, if you have those two things in conjunction, you might put it together. But it'd be interesting.
I feel like the revelation that that his wife is alive, seemingly in some form, is more for Mark than it is for the people on the outside. Like, I think it's.
They'll let his any.
I don't think it's gonna do anything for them on the outside. I feel like they are just gonna. I don't even know if they'll be able to figure out what he meant. I have less confidence in their intelligence than you do. But like, I don't know why they think she's dead, which is why I've been like, is she an android? Like, what is Mrs. Casey?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Why would you think someone was dead? Some people obviously theorized that maybe she was in a coma, and then.
That's one of the protocols.
Yeah, so that would. Right. So then maybe they just thought she was dead, but she was just in a coma, but then they've like been able to restore part of her to life somehow. Is that the theory?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about it. I think like some of Miss Cobell's stuff in this episode too gives you more to think about with talking about how they're all alive and suffering. Like, that implies they're alive, but I don't know. Obviously.
Our cat is having too much fun in the background.
You have all kinds of guests with you tonight.
Yes, all kinds of guests. What did you think of the characters' discoveries? Like, that they each sort of had like revelations given to them that changed their.
I know a lot of people were looking forward to seeing Mark like see Rickon. Right?
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
They were so excited, and I thought that was pretty cool too. I mean, I thought it was interesting to see like Irving, like more of where he lives, and then like to figure out like that Britt is there, and then that was a big reveal that Britt has actually a husband out in the outside world, so they can keep going with that. I feel like with that story they could keep going, they might not. It depends on what they end up doing.
I don't care about Irving at all. But.
Well, I just think I'm interested to see if they like keep going with that or not. Because in some ways it seems like it depends on what they do.
Sure.
And then it was, I think, like my favorite character is Helly. I loved every second that we got to watch her kind of walking around. I loved that they had a reason for why Milchek was taking all those pictures all season, and that they had
which was yeah,
like showing a Severance story. It made so much more sense why he had been doing that. So I thought it was so much fun watching everything with her.
I love that her outie is just like a straight up nasty person. Yeah. It's like.
But she's intense, so it kind of like makes sense. Like they're all like they're different, but they you can see like reflections of their like personalities in both like the innie and the outie.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So I guess we get Mark next season probably trying to figure out what's going on with Miss Casey, which, you know, all he knows is she's his wife. He doesn't know a thing about their relationship other than that, theoretically. So I wonder how that will play out.
So this is why I don't think they'll reset them, because you'll want them to have these memories to some extent.
Right.
I just don't know. I trust the writers enough from like how they wrote this season, but so many shows go off the cliff after season one, so I'm like crossing my fingers that they can keep up
a reset or some kind of memory wipe would be such a cheat, I feel. Like it would be such a way to just repeat storylines that you've already gone through. And I think that the thing that I've really enjoyed about this season was that it really moved at a good clip, and it was always moving forward. Like it didn't feel cyclical. So if it starts to become a cyclical show, I'm not sure how much
I just think there's so much that
we'll enjoy that.
Expand it, though.
Yeah,
like,
that is true.
There's so many characters in the going back to the controls room that like they're monitoring. I think someone mentioned on Reddit, they mentioned like hundreds of thousands of employees. Like you've only had so few people in that office environment so far. There's still so much potential to bring in new characters, and there's just a lot. They've left so many threads like that they can go with.
Well, and you know, they could go either way with Helly giving her speech. Like they can make that a big deal, like that's really going to blow up politically and, you know, create tons of issues for Lumen, or they could just kind of have it be like nobody cares, it's just silenced and it's not a big issue.
I assume it'll be silenced, but
I'm
so curious what they'll do. And one of the things I love is that there's so many questions still about like the outside world and what's going on, because it seems like there's things that aren't like super normal, and so there's like I just love that there's so many questions. Like
I feel like one of the biggest wild cards for next season is what they're going to do with, is it Mrs. Cobell?
Yes, Miss Cobell. I always forget her outside name. Is it Selvig?
Yeah. She's technically been fired at this point, so I'm curious, like, is she going to worm her way back into the company now that she has this information? Is this next season going to be her squashing everyone for their rebellion?
It's so interesting, or maybe not interesting. I wonder if it's a little bit of an inconsistency. Probably not, because she's pretty intense throughout the season, but like how she, like the end of last episode, she hugged Mark and was like, get away from those people, and seemed to genuinely care about him for some reason. But then by the end of this episode, she's so intense, you know, she's like, I'm going to turn them in, I'm going to take down Helly, like right back to like where she was. And she said, I have not figured out her character.
I think it's safe to say that we really don't have enough information about her yet to really know what her... I mean, I hope that they have such a clear, and I assume that they do, but
I think they do.
That they have such a clear character in mind, and it will all make sense in retrospect. But
I think it's clear that she has someone that she cared about.
Yes.
I don't know if that person is dead or in the same state as Miss Casey. I think that could be a good explanation for why she's so invested in Mark, watching Mark, invested both outside and inside. I think there's a lot of questions about who that is, what happened to them, but it's pretty clear that is playing into.
Do you think, well, this is random, but they brought up the fact that the lady you thought this was a great application of the Severance technology, and you were like, I'll sign up for that, with the woman who was pregnant and, I guess she was in Severance for the whole time she was in labor. Is that how that worked?
I don't know, how long she would have been severed.
Was that what they implied?
But I think at least it implies for each time she had a baby, so I don't know if it's
maybe just for the labor. That would be quite
given that
short
the character had in that cabin a different name for the baby picked out, the implication would be that she had been severed for longer than just like that night of getting ready to have the baby.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. But it is, I do think they have to be creative with in the real world, what kind of scenarios would people really want to do this? And there's plenty of scenarios, but I thought that was really
But do you think they're setting something up potentially, that someone did this, or
did what?
did doesn't realize that they have a baby or something. I'm just curious. I felt like they introduced this for a reason, perhaps, but I doubt it's just a random one-off. But I can't think of can't think of what to deduce from this. So
another thing that came up related to pregnancy in the season was on the news. They were talking about how an employee who had been in the Severance state came out and was pregnant, or claimed that they got pregnant while they were severed. So I think there are definitely themes there or storylines they could play with. So it'll be fun to see.
So yeah, that was a pretty thrilling episode. Dylan is a hero, of course.
Yeah. How have we not talked about Dylan? He's we were shouting our love for him in the episode. He's just so awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess he had a lot of moments to shine last episode, so maybe that's why they didn't give him quite as much, even though he was being the hero. So I felt kind of bad for the character, but yeah, he's awesome.
So my brother-in-law pointed out that they said that Helly had 20 minutes until she was going to give her speech. So we have a sort of a timeline for how long he was holding on to those two things.
Yeah.
And we were debating how long any of us could do it. And, some of us were more confident in our ability to do that for an extended period of time than others.
Yeah, not me.
So realistically, I'm not sure.
My sister brought up the willpower. They went into that with so much team, and he has the little picture that he his prize. So, he was in it. He was I'm gonna do this for these people. But will he remember them? That's the question.
At least he didn't die. I thought that they were.
Really I'm so curious how they open next season. I tend to doubt. What do you think? Will they open it with where they all were, or will they open it in the next place that they're in?
I think that they'll open it in the next place and then slowly settle the audience into the past events that happened between the end of this season and where they're at the beginning of season 2.
We'll have to establish some big new questions and things. I think this season the biggest question from beginning of Helly laying on the table, the finale is Helly Egan or Helena Egan. So I think maybe we'll be able to tell pretty early okay, what kind of things are they gonna center it around.
Well, I'm curious if they would even, I feel like they wouldn't let her go back in after she did this, but
I think they'll have to.
But why would they have to?
For the story. For me.
Plot reasons. Plot reasons. The way that Helena's dad was talking, he just hates the innie. I feel like he would not let the innie have control again after this, knowing that they managed to pull this off. But yeah, so there's a lot of questions.
They may hold us out on her too, because I wondered that at the end of when she was saying goodbye to Mark in the elevator. It seemed like it could be that moment in television where you're they're going to keep them apart.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That's how I interpret. I'm by letting them kiss and have that moment.
That's a good point.
They're probably going to keep these two apart. I don't know how that will look, but maybe it'll look like they're not going to let Helly be an innie for that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for joining me. You had great thoughts. And I don't get to steal them today. Thank you for watching this video. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of other shows, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you for watching.